When my wife and I bought our cabin in a quiet mountain community, we thought it would be a peaceful retreat. Instead, we quickly learned that the Homeowners Association, HOA, had a tight grip on everything, from how tall your grass could grow to what kind of curtains you could hang. One weekend, my wife noticed the lock on our cabin door was sticking. Being practical, she replaced it with a sturdier model. Nothing flashy, nothing unusual, just a new lock for safety. The next morning, 2 squad cars rolled up our gravel driveway. The homeowner's president, red-faced and pointing at our cabin, had called the police to report that we had made an unauthorized structural modification. The officers walked up with serious expressions, clearly expecting trouble. But before they could say a word, my wife calmly reached into her wallet and pulled out her badge. She was a detective with the city police department. The scene shifted instantly. The officers froze, exchanged glances, and their demeanor softened. One of them muttered, "This is a civil matter, not a criminal one," before politely excusing themselves. The HOA president's jaw dropped. He hadn't expected the very person he tried to intimidate to outrank his call. Needless to say, the HOA didn't bother us again about the lock.
Homeowners Associations, or HOAs, were originally created with the idea of protecting property values and fostering a sense of shared responsibility within communities. On paper, the concept sounds reasonable. A group of homeowners collectively agreeing to maintain certain standards, pool resources for amenities, and preserve the overall character of a neighborhood. In practice, however, the reality often drifts far from this ideal. Many people discover too late that HOAs can become sources of frustration, conflict, and even legal disputes when the rules cross into overreach. Consider something as simple as replacing a cabin lock. A lock is not decorative, nor is it a structural alteration that changes the aesthetic of a community. It is a basic necessity, a safety feature every homeowner has the right to update when it becomes faulty or outdated. Yet in some communities governed by strict HOAs, even this practical act can be flagged as a violation. When associations start inserting themselves into decisions that fall squarely under personal safety and property upkeep, they reveal how easily the balance of authority can tip too far. The problem lies in the interpretation and enforcement of rules. HOAs often draft covenants and bylaws that are broad in scope, covering everything from landscaping choices to exterior paint colors. While the original purpose of these rules is to ensure harmony and prevent eyesores, the language can be vague enough to allow for wide interpretation. This opens the door to arbitrary enforcement, where individual board members or presidents wield authority unevenly. For homeowners, it can feel less like being part of a cooperative community and more like living under constant surveillance. What makes this dynamic even more problematic is the power structure within HOAs. The board is typically composed of fellow homeowners who volunteer or get elected, yet once in position, they hold significant influence over their neighbors. These individuals are not trained legal experts, nor are they neutral parties in disputes. They are often people with their own biases, preferences, and sometimes personal grudges. When personal power mixes with vague rules, enforcement becomes inconsistent, and homeowners can find themselves targeted for infractions that are more about personal disagreements than genuine violations. Educationally speaking, the lesson here is about the danger of unchecked authority in small governing bodies. Unlike city or county governments, HOAs are not subject to the same levels of oversight or public accountability. Their decisions, however, carry weight and can even lead to fines, liens, or lawsuits if homeowners resist. This makes it all the more important for residents to be informed about their rights and to recognize when an association is exceeding its intended scope. It is worth reflecting on the broader social impact of this dynamic. Communities are meant to foster connection and cooperation, yet overly strict or invasive HOAs can breed division and resentment. Instead of encouraging neighbors to support one another, they create an environment where people feel policed, not protected. When someone is reported for something as benign as replacing a lock, it communicates a message that compliance matters more than common sense. It also discourages initiative, since homeowners may fear that any change they make could draw scrutiny. Another key point is that overreach by HOAs often escalates situations unnecessarily. What could have been solved with a simple conversation becomes a matter of enforcement, complaints, or even police involvement. This escalation not only wastes resources, but also erodes trust within the community. Homeowners begin to view their association not as a partner, but as an adversary. And once that perception sets in, the sense of community deteriorates quickly. Ultimately, the overreach of HOAs serves as a cautionary tale about the fine line between governance and intrusion. Homeowners should be able to take reasonable steps to protect their property and their families without fearing unnecessary intervention. Associations, for their part, need to remember that their authority exists to serve the collective good, not to control every personal choice. When that balance is lost, the association undermines the very purpose for which it was created. In the end, replacing a lock is a matter of safety and personal responsibility, not an act of rebellion against community standards. The fact that such a simple decision could trigger an HOA to call law enforcement demonstrates just how easily authority can be distorted when common sense is replaced by rigid control. It's a reminder that rules, no matter how well-intentioned, should never outweigh the rights of individuals to protect their homes and live peacefully within them.
Authority, when exercised properly, is meant to bring order, fairness, and accountability. It provides structure to communities, workplaces, and governments, ensuring that rules are followed and disputes are settled in a just way. However, authority in the wrong hands can quickly shift from being a tool of guidance to one of control and intimidation. The misuse of authority is not always about outright corruption or dramatic abuse. Often, it begins with small decisions made by people who allow their personal feelings or sense of power to overshadow the responsibilities that come with their role. In the case of an HOA calling the police over something as trivial as a homeowner replacing a lock, the situation illustrates just how easily authority can be misapplied when perspective is lost. The heart of the issue lies in the distinction between authority and power. Authority is legitimate. It is granted by a set of rules or by a community of people who agree to be guided by it. Power, however, can be arbitrary and is often wielded to influence others regardless of fairness or necessity. When an HOA president decides to escalate a minor matter into a police call, they may claim they're simply enforcing the rules, but in reality, they're exercising personal power in a way that goes far beyond the scope of their legitimate authority. This blurring of lines is where misuse begins. Misuse of authority often stems from a belief that compliance is more important than reason. Instead of asking, "Is this rule being broken in a way that genuinely harms the community?" the question becomes, how do we enforce the rule regardless of context? This mindset reduces the role of authority to rigid enforcement rather than thoughtful judgment. In practice, it can mean punishing harmless behavior while ignoring the spirit behind the rules. A homeowner who updates a lock for safety is treated as though they undermined community standards when in reality they acted responsibly. Authority, when misused, transforms reasonable actions into supposed violations. Another layer to consider is the chilling effect that this misuse has on communities. When people see authority figures escalate minor issues, they begin to feel a constant sense of surveillance. Instead of neighbors working together or solving problems informally, residents fear that any small deviation could bring down unnecessary consequences. This environment fosters resentment rather than cooperation. Ironically, authority that is meant to strengthen a community can, when misused, weaken it by driving wedges between people and discouraging independent thought or action. Educationally, the lesson here extends beyond HOAs into all forms of governance. Whether in schools, workplaces, or government institutions, the misuse of authority often shares common characteristics: overreaction, lack of proportionality, and disregard for context. In many cases, those in positions of authority forget their role is not simply to enforce, but to serve the broader good of those they oversee. Authority is not meant to be a hammer looking for nails. It is meant to be a balancing tool that keeps fairness and safety at the forefront. The escalation of a minor civil matter into a police incident highlights a second misuse, involving law enforcement in situations where it does not belong. Police are tasked with protecting communities from crime, not resolving neighborly disagreements over locks or paint colors. By involving them unnecessarily, authority figures risk wasting public resources, placing officers in uncomfortable positions, and heightening tensions rather than resolving them. It also raises questions of credibility. When people in authority cry wolf over small issues, it undermines their legitimacy when genuine problems arise. On a broader scale, misuse of authority erodes trust. Once people see that decisions are being made unfairly or without proportionality, they lose faith in the system as a whole. This lack of trust can linger and extend into other areas, making future cooperation much more difficult. Homeowners may stop attending meetings, disengage from community discussions, or even move away to avoid the environment. The long-term damage caused by such misuse far outweighs any short-term sense of control that those in authority might feel. Ultimately, the misuse of authority comes down to forgetting the purpose of leadership. Rules and positions of responsibility exist not to exert dominance, but to foster a healthy, safe, and fair environment for all. When authority is exercised thoughtfully, it encourages cooperation and builds trust. When it is misused, it breeds resentment and conflict. The story of an HOA president calling the police over a simple lock change may sound absurd on the surface, but it is a powerful example of how easily authority can be distorted when those in charge lose sight of the bigger picture. It serves as a reminder that authority should always be rooted in fairness, proportionality, and common sense, not in personal agendas or the pursuit of control for its own sake.
One of the most powerful tools any homeowner can possess is knowledge of their rights. Rights form the foundation of how individuals interact with institutions, governing bodies, and each other. And yet, many people do not fully understand the extent of the protections they already have. When situations arise that involve disputes with organizations like HOAs, landlords, or even employers, those who lack awareness often feel pressured to comply simply because an authority figure says they must. In reality, the law frequently offers more protection than people realize, and distinguishing between what is enforceable and what is merely suggested can make all the difference in avoiding unnecessary stress and intimidation. Take, for example, the difference between a civil matter and a criminal matter. Many homeowners assume that if the police are called, they must have done something wrong in a legal sense. This is not necessarily true. A civil matter is a dispute between private parties, such as a disagreement with an HOA, a conflict with the neighbor over property lines, or a contractual disagreement with a service provider. These issues are resolved through negotiation, mediation, or the courts if needed, but they are not criminal acts. Criminal matters, by contrast, involve violations of laws that carry potential penalties such as fines, probation, or imprisonment. Knowing the difference empowers individuals to stay calm when someone tries to escalate a civil dispute into something it is not. HOAs often rely on broad covenants and bylaws, which, while binding contracts, are not the same as laws created by governments. They cannot criminalize actions that are perfectly legal under state or federal law. For instance, updating a lock on your own front door is a matter of personal safety and property maintenance, not a crime. If an HOA disapproves, it can issue warnings, fines, or seek remedies through civil court, but it cannot involve law enforcement as though the homeowner committed a burglary. Recognizing this distinction allows homeowners to stand their ground confidently without being intimidated by threats of police involvement. Understanding one's rights also means recognizing due process. HOAs cannot act unilaterally without giving homeowners notice and an opportunity to respond. This process is often outlined in state statutes that govern associations. For example,
Before fines can be imposed, most states require written warnings, hearings, and the chance for the homeowner to present their side. Skipping these steps or enforcing rules inconsistently could render an HOA's actions invalid. A homeowner who knows these protections can insist on fair treatment instead of simply paying fines out of fear or confusion. Beyond disputes with HOAs, the principle of knowing your rights applies broadly. Many people accept restrictions or demands without question, assuming they must comply. Yet whether it is a landlord demanding access without proper notice, an employer misclassifying workers, or an HOA misusing its authority, the law typically provides safeguards. The key lies in education. Taking the time to learn local statutes, reviewing contracts carefully, and seeking professional advice when something seems questionable. In the age of accessible information, ignorance is often the greatest disadvantage. Moreover, knowing your rights changes the balance of power. When individuals are informed, those in positions of authority are less likely to overstep. It becomes harder to use intimidation as a tactic when the person on the receiving end can clearly state what the law allows and what it does not. This not only protects the individual in the moment, but also sets a precedent that deters future overreach. It builds confidence and resilience, reducing the fear that often comes with confrontation. At a deeper level, understanding your rights fosters independence and peace of mind. Instead of feeling trapped by systems or subject to arbitrary enforcement, individuals gain a sense of control over their lives and property. They are better equipped to distinguish between genuine obligations and unnecessary demands. They also become better advocates for themselves and for their communities, helping others understand that fairness and legality must go hand in hand. The situation of an HOA calling the police over a new lock may seem ridiculous, but it underlines a serious point. Without knowledge of one's rights, a homeowner could easily have felt intimidated, complied unnecessarily, or even paid unwarranted fines. By contrast, when people know where civil authority ends and criminal law begins, they can push back with confidence and ensure that reason prevails. Education is not just about preventing abuse in the moment. It is about creating a culture where individuals and communities alike understand that rights are not privileges granted by organizations, but protections guaranteed by law.
In every conflict where rules, authority, or community pressure are involved, one of the most valuable lessons a person can learn is the importance of standing firm. Standing firm does not necessarily mean being confrontational or aggressive. Rather, it means holding to what is right, reasonable, and fair, even when others try to push back. It is about balance, being calm and respectful, while also refusing to be intimidated. When faced with situations like an HOA calling the police over a lock change, standing firm transforms the entire dynamic. Instead of letting fear or confusion dictate the outcome, confidence and clarity ensure that the truth rises above unnecessary noise. The first reason standing firm matters is that it protects individual dignity. When people allow themselves to be steamrolled by unfair demands, they are not just giving in on a single issue. They are setting a precedent that their voice and choices do not matter. Over time, this erodes self-respect and emboldens those who misuse authority to continue pushing boundaries. Standing firm communicates that everyone has a right to be heard, a right to make decisions about their property or life, and a right to resist pressure when it exceeds reasonable limits. Another reason is that standing firm educates others. When one person refuses to back down in the face of overreach, it signals to everyone watching that rules are not absolute when they are applied unfairly. In many communities, people quietly accept overbearing HOA decisions or workplace mandates because they believe resistance is futile. However, when someone calmly but clearly asserts their rights, it inspires others to rethink their assumptions. It demonstrates that strength does not require hostility. It simply requires persistence and knowledge. This ripple effect strengthens communities by encouraging fairness and discouraging arbitrary enforcement. Standing firm also prevents escalation from being one-sided. Often, conflicts escalate not because of the substance of the issue, but because one side believes the other will simply comply. When a homeowner immediately apologizes and gives in, the person in authority feels validated in their approach. But when the homeowner stands their ground, calmly explaining why the demand is unreasonable or unenforceable, it forces the authority figure to reconsider. It shifts the balance of power from blind compliance to dialogue. And in many cases, it stops further intimidation in its tracks. It is important to recognize that standing firm does not mean being disrespectful. Losing composure or responding with hostility often undermines the strength of one's position. The most effective firmness is calm, reasoned, and grounded in facts. This is why preparation matters. Those who know their rights, understand the rules, and can point out inconsistencies are far more effective at holding their ground than those who rely on emotion alone. Firmness without knowledge can come across as stubbornness, but firmness combined with clarity commands respect. Beyond immediate disputes, the principle of standing firm carries long-term benefits. People who make a habit of protecting their boundaries build resilience. They learn that discomfort in the moment is worth the peace of mind that comes later. They also establish reputations as individuals who cannot be easily manipulated, which discourages others from attempting to take advantage of them in the future. In contrast, those who routinely give in quickly may find themselves facing repeated conflicts, as others recognize them as easy targets. Standing firm also teaches patience and problem-solving. When individuals are unwilling to simply bend to pressure, they are more likely to explore creative solutions, negotiate from a place of strength, and find outcomes that preserve fairness. This skill is valuable in all aspects of life, whether dealing with HOAs, employers, or even personal relationships. It encourages people to think critically rather than automatically yielding to the loudest voice in the room. Ultimately, standing firm is not just about winning a single dispute. It is about reinforcing the principle that fairness, rights, and personal responsibility should guide interactions, not intimidation or blind enforcement of rules. In the story of a homeowner replacing a cabin lock, the real victory was not that the HOA backed down, but that the homeowner's calm confidence reminded everyone involved, including the police, that reason and authority are not the same thing. Standing firm allowed the truth of the situation to shine through without unnecessary compromise. In the larger picture, this lesson applies to everyday life. Whether in communities, workplaces, or society at large, those who stand firm set examples of strength, fairness, and balance. They show that intimidation loses its power when met with knowledge and composure. They remind others that rights are not negotiable privileges, but protections worth defending. Most importantly, they reinforce the simple truth that standing firm is not about resistance for its own sake. It is about creating an environment where fairness is respected, authority is balanced, and individuals can live without fear of unnecessary intrusion.